Good morning. Hope you guys aren't as wet as I am this morning. So my name is Warren Reed, and I'm here to talk to you about data visualization at the Office of Financial Research. So for my talk, I'm going to give you a little bit about my background. Then I'll talk a little bit about the OFR and the monitors program. And then I'll talk a little bit about data visualization at the OFR and how we leverage it to fulfill on our mandate. Then I'll do an interactive product demo, and finally I'll take some questions. So a little bit about me. I'm a data scientist at the U.S. Treasury's Office of Financial Research. I've been there for about 2 years. Prior to that, I had a background in engineering and finance. I worked on Wall Street for several years. And I lead what's called the monitors program. So at the office, we have 8 programs that organize our work. And I lead the monitors program, which is building interactive tools. And I'll go into more detail on that. You can reach me by email at warren.reed@ofr.treasury.gov. So the mission of the OFR is to promote financial stability, and by looking at the financial system, and what we do is we assess, measure, and monitor risk. We perform essential research, and we collect and standardize financial data. So what's unique about our office is that we don't have a regulatory mandate. It's a pure research and data mandate, so we're able to be independent. And the 2010 Dodd-Frank Act established our office to support the Financial Stability Oversight Council and the public. Now, the monitors program is one of OFR's core mandates, which is to build tools for risk measurement and monitoring. And these tools, some of them are non-interactive, some of them are very interactive. And part of our mandate is to make these tools accessible to the public. We have 3 monitoring products to date. We have the Financial Stability Monitor, the Financial Markets Monitor, and the U.S. Money Market Fund Monitor, and I'll go into detail on all 3. So the Financial Stability Monitor, this is just a screenshot of it, is a heat map of key financial stability risks. And so what we did was, on the back end, we took 60 different risk indicators, and we made it easy for our users, because one thing that we have to balance is both the public and sort of Congress, financial journalist, stakeholder, and the more sort of complex and more technically savvy users. So this is a monitor that we've built that essentially visualizes a lot of different financial indicators in the form of a heat map and makes it easy to understand and to use. We look at a few areas of risk. We look at macroeconomic risk, we look at market risk, credit risk, funding and liquidity risk, and finally contagion risk. And what you can see here in this screenshot is that the only area of red is interest rate risk. I'm sure you guys are all aware we've had low interest rates for a very, very long time, and so that's one of the largest risks, is that there's a rapid repricing of interest rates. The next monitor is the Financial Markets Monitor. And this is more of a non-interactive product, but on the back end, what we've built internally is this data visualization tool that generates all of our visualizations and charting. So you can see here, this is a screenshot of our website of a recent publication. So we have a team of analysts that write commentary on the markets, and then my team built a tool that leverages all the in-house data that we have and can generate the visualizations for any commentary that they want to write. And finally, our third tool is the U.S. Money Market Fund Monitor. This is our most interactive tool, and I'll go into a live product demo of the tool shortly. And this tool examines various dimensions of the U.S. money market funds with interactive visualizations. Show of hands if you have a money market fund or have heard of a money market fund. Okay, so most people have some type of relationship to a money market fund, whether it's connected to their bank account or to their investment account. And so U.S. money market funds were at the center of the financial crisis, most people don't realize, during 2007, 2009, and there was a lack of transparency at the deepest level. So to the point where money market funds were posting on their website and sending out emails that we do not have exposure to Lehman Brothers. So that was a level of financial transparency that was available during the financial crisis. And so what this tool aims to do is to visualize the risks and exposures in that industry for the public to be able to consume. So now I'm going to dive into a use case to talk a little bit about the background and the motivations of the Money Market Fund Monitor, and then I'll do a live demo. So before we built the tool, what we did was we wanted to make sure that we understood the problem itself. So we had a team of data scientists and subject matter experts sit at the table to understand what exactly we wanted to build. And what we knew is that there were essentially runs, or bank runs, on money market funds. That was a sort of key contributor to the financial crisis. And back in 2010, there was new data reporting that mandated every single US money market fund had to report on what's called Form NMFP on a monthly basis. So similar to an ETF or a mutual fund, there was now portfolio level characteristics and details available to this industry. And that form contained data elements with lots of attribution level detail that you can drill down to just a single money market fund as well as aggregate up into the entire industry level. And so what we did is we built a monitoring tool to unlock insights into this industry by leveraging this data set. Just to go into a little bit about the process of how we transformed the data and built the tool on top of this data set. What we did is we had access to the raw data from the SEC. Now, this data was recently made fully public, but you'd have to parse from the SEC's website on a filing by filing basis, and every filing is 700 pages. So it would be a very cumbersome and arduous process for you to go and do it yourself. Luckily, we have a direct feed from the SEC to where we can get all of this data in an XML format. And what we did was did an ETL process and clean the data and what we call aggregate into a data mart. So we did the ETL and the cleaning, and then we did some enhancements to normalize the data to allow us to have what we call a data mart or an aggregated data set. Then we wanted to, before we started actually building the tool, we wanted to make sure that we understood what questions that we wanted to answer and really to ask. And there was 3 questions. 1, how can we better understand the risks in the US money market fund industry? 2, how can we track individual funds and the market as a whole? And 3, how can we present this data to our stakeholders, given that we have a diverse set of stakeholders from the most advanced, sophisticated financial market participant to a congressperson who's thinking about how they want to write legislation. So this is just 6 screenshots, which we'll go into more detail on during the interactive demo, but we initially, what we did was, for the first version of the tool, we wanted to present a few set of visualizations or views to answer the most basic questions. And further versions that we're working on right now, we were sort of open it up for more sort of full interactive queryability. So a little bit about the design and development stack. So we used, given that the data was well structured, we used a SQL backend, I used a Postgres database. We used a Python-based web framework called Flask. We really like that because it's lightweight and flexible and doesn't have a lot of the overhead that Django has. And then on the front end, we use HighCharts. HighCharts is really great because there's a lot of rich functionality that's built into HighCharts. And given that this is a new data set, we were really looking for the low-hanging fruit. We weren't looking to reinvent the wheel. Some of the design principles, so we wanted to show the data, and we didn't want to distort it, so you won't see any pie charts in any of our visualizations. We wanted to present a lot of numbers in a small space to show both the aggregated industry view, but then allow the users to drill down at the most disaggregated level. We wanted to also make sure that the data set was coherent and allow the user to traverse the data. And so what you see here is a screenshot of a modal pop-up, which allows you to traverse the data. So now we're going to do a live product demo. Okay. All right, so this is the monitor. So if you go to our website, financialresearch.gov, you go to Analysis and you click US Money Market Fund Monitor, you can see some of the different tools that I mentioned just now. But for the US Money Market Fund Monitor, this is when you click the link there, this is the landing page that you see. What you'll quickly notice is that while we do have the visualization, which is front and center in the middle of the screen, we also wanted to make sure that we had content and sort of guideposts for the more lay users. So you see things like tooltips that describe, let's see, there you go. Tooltips that describe what a money market fund is, a link to the SEC's website, as well as a guide We have a reference guide as well, which is like a how-to, which our subject matter experts wrote. We also have, so at the top, you can select the different views. There are 6, as I mentioned. And what you can do here, and we'll just go through this particular view, is a number of things. So as I mentioned before, we wanted to display both the aggregate industry-level data, as well as being able to give the user the ability to drill down. So what you can see here is this is called the investments by any US money market fund. So at the most granular level of detail is one particular money market fund, and this has been aggregated up into one stacked bar chart. So we can see here is that since 2011, since the data form was required to be reported on, assets have, for the most part, been around $3 trillion in AUM. It's fluctuated around that number since then. And what you can see here is it's stacked by the asset manager. So you can see with the tooltip, you can explore and you can see, and as you move across the chart, and the tooltip will follow the navigation panel on the left. So you can see that Fidelity is the largest fund manager with about $500 billion in assets, roughly 18% of the entire industry. And then you can also zoom into the smallest funds as well, just to get some more granular level detail. You can also download the data. We make it available in a CSV. We're also working on API and other functionality to make it a lot easier for our users to access the data. And that will be rolled out once we add some more, make it more query-like in the types of analysis that you want to do. And so now I'm going to traverse down into the data. So what you'll notice, I just want to point you to the subtitle here, is that it will also annotate what you're looking at. So now you can see you're looking at total assets of each manager. But if we want to look at Fidelity, the modal that I mentioned before pops up, and now you see an area chart, which is a lot easier to see than the stacked bar chart, just to understand how assets under management has evolved over time. You also have the ability to download the data if you want by a CSV. But then you can drill down. So funds their individual funds can also be part of a family, almost like a parent. And so part of the data cleaning that we did was we did entity resolution. So we had to take every single money market fund, I think there's a little under 10 million records that we had to resolve, and assign that to a parent. And so what you'll see now is that this will now show, if I have my internet connection. Oh, there we go. This will now show total assets of each fund managed by Fidelity. So now we're just looking at Fidelity, and we can see all the different funds. And we can start to see all the different trends within each particular fund. And you can see here, again, that one of the funds is the largest fund, so the Fidelity Government Cash Reserves, almost 25% of total assets within the Fidelity Fund Complex. And what you can do is drill down to actually see a little bit more detail. So if you want to actually see what are the country exposures, you can drill down to the country level. This is something that's important because during the financial crisis that eventually evolved to the European sovereign debt crisis, a lot of investors were focused on country exposures, right? There were sort of geographical risk exposures that they didn't have access to or to understand. I'm on the guest Wi-Fi. I'm not sure why this is not. Okay, now we're back. So we were looking at Fidelity, and I drilled down at the fund level. So you're able to, there we go. You're able to look at every single fund within the Fidelity Fund Manager complex. But what you can do next is you can go down and you can drill down to the country level. So you want to understand what are Fidelity's government cash reserves, that particular fund's exposure across the world. And as you can see, the subtitle also updates as well, so you can understand what you're looking at. And so what you can quickly see, just visually, is this purple region, right? All of a sudden, they just completely reduce their exposure. Looks like that's Japan, which eventually they turn their rates negative. So this particular fund migrated away from Japan and moved towards the US. And that's what's great about visualizing a data set that no one has looked at before is that we can leverage very basic visualization chart types to convey information right away. Now, if we wanted to drill down even more, we can actually see what is the actual credit, or who are they actually lending to. So if we wanted to look at, say, so this is one particular Fidelity fund, and we can say, okay, so they're lending against JP Morgan, and you can drill down and you can say what types of investments that they made with JP Morgan. And you can see the different asset types here. So this is one particular view. I'll walk through one additional use case. But what's great about this is it allows users to drill and traverse different layers of data. There are some that we actually held out, so we can even do sector-based aggregations, and we're working on those right now. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback across asset managers, investment banks, financial journalists, and Congress on new features and different things they want to look at. So now I'm going to go to another view and look at what's called investment by U.S. prime money market funds. So this view is looking just at prime money market funds. Prime funds typically invest in corporates. So there are certain ones that maybe just focus on government only, government Treasury bonds, things of that nature. This one typically invests in corporates. And what you can look at is, say a question you wanted to ask is during Brexit, right? So the UK, there was a referendum that they wanted to vote to leave the EU. And one thing that that our users were able to do, and there are actually a number of financial articles written about and citing our tool, is what is the exposure to the UK from the money market fund industry. So what you can do is you can actually drill down, you can go into Europe. Again, you can see the modal pop up, and you can see just what's the exposure to Europe from prime money market funds. And then you can drill down to the country level. So you can see that UK is the second largest exposure, although it doesn't look too large. $32 billion, or 14% of European exposure. And then you can drill down and you can see, okay, what are they what are they actually exposed to in the UK? And you can say they're mainly exposed to financial institutions. So you can actually drill down and you can see which financial institutions they're actually exposed to. So it looks like Barclays is the largest financial institution that US prime money market funds are exposed to. And you can actually drill down and see which money market funds have lent to Barclays. And you say, look, okay, Fidelity is the largest one, and you can actually go and see every single money market fund that has lent money to Barclays. So I'm going to leave it there and take some questions. And thanks for your time. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So her question was, it seems like there's a lot of systematic behavior in the charts. And have we looked at that and investigated what that behavior is? So we've looked at, so there's two answers to that. One, our subject matter experts anecdotally know what types of things go on in the market. So there are a lot of quarter end or month end or year end type of activity. Some call it window dressing, where they clean up the balance sheet, things like that, that contribute to that systematic behavior. One thing that our team of data scientists and subject matter experts are doing now is doing more advanced analytical work on it. So the first thing we want to do is just visualize this data set, understand the basics, and now we're looking at different types of analytics to actually understand sort of in a more sort of detailed level what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, so his question is, did we use any user experience designers? And are we tracking and monitoring any metrics to enhance and make the tool better? So one challenge, and actually what's fortunate about my office is that since we're brand new within the U.S. Treasury, we were able to build everything from the ground up. So we have the latest and greatest technology. We use open source technologies. Everything is in-house. We have a Hadoop cluster. We can do parallel computing. It's pretty remarkable. It rivals what I was doing at a startup or when I was on Wall Street. And one thing that we did, this current version of the tool is actually didn't have too much user experience. We did some, but we now have an in-house user experience designer that is helping us enhance the tool. So what we were able to do was leverage HighCharts and a lot of the built-in sort of visualization user experience that comes within that library. And we also track the metrics, so we are monitoring who's using it. We reach out to our stakeholders. We're able to get feedback from them. So both on a metric level, but then even talking to them. And so that's driving sort of our stakeholder engagement and enhancing and improving the product. Anyone else? Yeah, in the back. Yeah. Got it. So the question is, how familiar was my team with the tech stack and was any of it new to us? And we were very familiar with it. So we built everything in-house. This was our preferred. We're all, for the most part, just Python programmers. And so we were deeply familiar with the tech stack. Yeah.
Looking at the XML downloads, did you find consistency across data sources at the SEC that you were sucking off, or did you find some inconsistent ways that the data was made available, therefore causing you to have to do all sorts of little custom one-offs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So his question is, when we essentially got the data from the SEC and parsed the XML, were there any inconsistencies or any issues that we had to deal with and deal on a one-off basis to parse the data? And the answer is yes. So the way the form was designed, there was, it allowed for manual entry. And so what that introduced is a lot of manual resolution work that we had to do. So some of the fields, the money market fund could just type it in. And so we literally have sometimes just have someone take their eyeballs and look at it and resolve it that way. And so what we had to do was basically build a semi-automated sort of ETL process where if we could resolve them programmatically, we would do that, and if not, we would kick out an exception, and then we would manually resolve it. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, so his question is, are there any shortcomings with using this sort of stacked bar chart visualization? And the answer is yes. So I think there are two shortcomings and constraints that we knew going in. One is that initially we were going to constrain the user to a particular set of visualization and views. And that was based off of the questions that our users wanted to ask. So whether it was Congress, which we've demoed in front of Congress, whether it was financial journalists, or when we were demoing in front of the Fed or banks, there were similar questions that they were constantly asking, and we wanted to make sure that they were able to answer those questions. One thing that we want to enhance as well is giving more data to the user, so allowing someone to draw their own conclusions. And so what we liked about this visualization and sort of using HighCharts is that sort of off the shelf, we were able to gain a lot. And so, yes, there may be some shortcomings, but it really got us sort of, more than 80% of the way there. Any last questions? Yeah. Yeah, so his question is, were there any user permissionings based off of access to different types of views? So the answer is no. For this particular monitor, no. This data is fully public, so we make it available to all users. Now, we do have access to certain data sets that are more sensitive, and so those types of tools, we have strict user controls and permissions and only allow the specific users to be able to access that. But this particular tool is for the public. So we have all of our stakeholders using this and giving us feedback, and we update the data on a monthly basis. All right. Thanks, everyone.